Hello, I'm Virginia Gray, Mayor of the Town of Wendell. I would like to thank Sidney Baines of Baines & Company Art and Framing for allowing us to tape our Wendell Mayor Show in his business. With me today are Steve Kruger and Sid Baines. Steve is the great-grandson of Jake May, the namesake for our opening day at the park event. Sid is the Wendell Historical Society president. Welcome to both of you, and thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
How did the idea of celebrating Mr. Jake May originate?
Well, the Wendell Historical Society is continually trying to find ways to promote the town and also to talk about and promote our history. We believe that Wendell's future is going to be built on the platform that's been created by our history. And Mr. Jake May is a historic figure, and we thought it was a good time to celebrate him. Also, this is the 100th anniversary of his going into the Major League Baseball program, so it's a good time.
So tell me why Mr. May is such a significant Wendell citizen.
Well, Mr. May was one of 3 professional baseball players that came from Wendell. Fred Henry was another, and Chuck Rowland the third. Mr. May's career was the largest, the most important of the 3 careers. And also, if you look at baseball and Wendell have almost been synonymous forever. During the early days of Wendell, Wendell sponsored a team. It was a club team that traveled around to other communities and played ball. When I was a kid here in Wendell, which doesn't seem like a long time ago, but maybe it was, over at Thompson Field, there was a really large, fully enclosed grandstand at the baseball diamond. And the field was also enclosed with a wooden fence. So there was a lot of baseball being played back then and then when I was a kid. And now baseball is still important. During the last 10 or 12 years, Wendell's had 14 youth baseball teams that have won state championships and also 2 youth softball teams that have won championships. So baseball is important, and the marriage between baseball and Wendell is just a really great story, and Mr. May is kind of the way to get us into all of that story.
So Steve, can you provide me with an overview of Mr. May's career in professional baseball?
Sure. So he started out actually playing for a club team here in Wendell when he was a teenager. Then he went on to a 14-year career in Major League Baseball, starting out with the St. Louis Cardinals. Started with them in 1917 and played with them till the 1921 season. Then he spent 2 years out on the West Coast playing for the Vernon Tigers of the PCL, which was a pretty significant time in his career. In 1922, he had a season with the Tigers where he went 35-9, struck out over 200 hitters, had a 1.84 ERA that season. Still holds the record to this day for the most wins for the PCL, which is pretty significant. The PCL is considered one of the top minor league systems in all of baseball to this day. And if you think of a lot of the great pitchers that especially pitched on teams on the West Coast, say Clayton Kershaw, Madison Bumgarner, guys like that, they all played in the PCL. So it's a pretty significant record. It was such a significant season that the Yankees offered the Tigers $75,000 for Jake's contract to make him a member of the Yankees. And that's a significant sum of money back then. They paid $100,000 to buy Babe Ruth's contract, only a little before that. So that might have been a very significant event in his whole career had they sold his contract to the Yankees, because they won a lot of World Series titles at that time. But from there, he, in 1923, didn't have quite as memorable a season as that 22 season. So he ended up being sold to, or it was kind of a trade along with cash considerations, to the Cincinnati Reds, and that's who he played for several years. Had some very significant seasons there. In 1924, he led the National League in saves. Also in 1927, had one of his better seasons where he won 15 games, had a 3.5 ERA. He also was 3rd in the league in strikeouts that year, finished 3rd in the National League in strikeouts twice. He also, 1 year in winter ball, playing down in Cuba, threw a no-hitter, and Cuba to this day is renowned for the caliber of its baseball talent. So he had a long, significant career. The event that always stands out, that when I was a child, Jake passed away before I was born, but he was still highly revered by everyone in our family, and a lot of that revolved around his appearance in the 1932 World Series. And that was with the New York Yankees, and what he's most famous for is striking out Babe Ruth twice in that World Series. So when I was growing up, we always heard about that. My grandmother, of course, was very proud of that moment. Articles were written periodically in the local paper here and also in the News and Observer. So that was the culmination of his career. He finished out with the Cubs in 1932, and fortunately they didn't win that World Series. Would have been nice to have a title, but we're all Cubs fans because of it, so we were very excited this year to see them win the World Series. And one other significant thing about Jake's career is, as a strikeout pitcher, there's a lot of statistical analysis done to kind of compare eras, because it's hard to look at somebody's numbers from back then compared to today.
Right.
So there's a statistic out there called normalized strikeout rate, where Jake is actually one of the top 25 strikeout pitchers of all time. And what that rate is they compare what was the average at the time. So, back then people didn't strike out nearly as many hitters, and they compare your numbers to the league average to come up with your normalized strikeout rate. So he's up there with all the all-time greats when you think of that statistic. Randy Johnson, Nolan Ryan, Walter Johnson, Steve Carlton, all the great strikeout pitchers.
I don't blame your grandmother for being proud.
Yeah.
I first heard about him hearing about striking out Babe Ruth.
Yeah,
That's what I heard.
That's still
And
to
now
this
I've learned
day
more.
the thing that I get asked about. So,
That's a big thing.
yes.
So Sid, you knew Mr. May. Share some of your memories of him with me.
While we were finding a lot and building a house, we lived upstairs in an apartment at Mr. May's for a couple of years. He was very kind to me. He took me fishing out to a pond that he had on Jake May Drive, or Jake May Drive wasn't there at the time. He took me to Lake Wendell. I remember a bird dog in the back that he cautioned me to leave alone because the bird dog was kind of mean. But I would kind of wander through the attic, our little apartment connected to the attic, and that attic was a virtual museum of baseball equipment. And I became real curious about it, and then as we'd visit downstairs, their den and living room was also a museum. There were baseballs on a counter just stacked everywhere, and photographs and so forth. And so I became real interested in his career. But he never volunteered a lot of information because he was so gracious. If I asked a question, he would answer it. But everybody in Wendell knew Jake May and knew that he had struck Babe Ruth out twice and that he was a great baseball hero to the town. And all my memories of him are good. I think that the only thing that at the time kind of bothered me was one day as a child I was playing with my baseball in the front yard, and I asked him to show me how to throw a curve. And Mr. May said, "Sid, I can't do that. I threw my arm away." And it's a 7 or 8 year old kid. I looked at him and he had both his arms. I didn't understand that. And I asked him again. He said, "No, I've thrown my arm away." And so I just kind of left it alone. And my parents explained it to me later. But anyway, I wish he'd have taught me how to throw that curve because it was supposed to be one of the best ever in professional baseball.
I can't imagine being a little boy and being so close to him. That must have been something.
Well, it was. And of course, as a child, everybody's bigger than life, and he was much bigger than that. And I would say that Mrs. May was a fine and gracious person too. They were just as nice of people as you can imagine. They lived over there on South Pine Street, and the house is still known as the Jake May House. And from what I understand, the people that have moved through it have left one of his cards on the wall in there. So it's going to always be a monument to the May family.
The Wendell Historical Society and the town board and Mr. May's family have been working real hard to get Mr. May inducted into the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame. Tell us a little bit about the Hall of Fame and what's going on his behalf.
Well, the Hall of Fame is an entity that's housed in the History Museum in Raleigh. And a number of years ago, I made a sort of a feeble attempt. I wasn't sure how to do it, but tried to get him in and was not real successful, but we tried again real hard this past year. Steve and I worked hard to pull together a package. The town gave us a lot of support, and we have an individual that's associated with the hall that has kind of given us some advice. Now, we've got to understand that like the Professional Baseball Hall of Fame, it takes years sometimes to get a candidate in. This past year, there were between 200 and 300 nominees. Mr. May was still there when the final 20 remained. Only 8 people were chosen this year. He was not one of them. But that's still pretty good when you're left in the final 20 and maybe 300 people were there to start with. We're going to continue to try. We're going to do things to celebrate Mr. May locally, and if he doesn't get in, we're still going to know who he is in this part of the world. But there are not many people that played as many years in professional baseball as he did. There are not many people that had his record. The problem is it was 100 years ago, and people today focus more on the more recent athletes, and they're great too, but let's consider innings in a baseball game. You know, we've only passed a couple of innings and we've got a lot to go, and the man that I'm working with says that he's going to get in one of these days, so we're going to keep working on it. And we thank the town for being so supportive. The town wrote letters to all the committee members on the selection committee, and Mayor, y'all have done a lot for us, and we appreciate that, and we think if we can get him in, it'll be good for Wendell.
I think it absolutely will. We'll do it again. I want to thank you both for being today's special guests, and thank you to Baines & Company Art and Framing for allowing us to film in your business. The town of Wendell is looking forward to celebrating Jake May and having a great time at Jake May Opening Day. On Saturday, April 15th, the Passage Church will sponsor an Easter egg hunt at the community park. It begins at 10:30. Children are asked to bring a basket or a bag. Please call 911-901-5195 for more information. Meet and greet the people who keep our community safe at the 9th Annual Public Safety Day. On Saturday, May 6th at 10 a.m., citizens young and old may get behind the wheel of a police car, learn about the equipment on a fire truck, and interact with police, fire, and EMS professionals. Join us for food, fun, and fellowship at this family-friendly event. On Saturday, May 13th, you can spend the day meeting artists in a day-long gala of visual, fine, and performing arts. Artists young and old are welcome to apply to paint a picture for auction at the end of the day. Enjoy live music at the J. Ashley Wall Town Square and bid on artwork in an effort to support the Wendell Appearance Commission projects. I also have some quick project updates. The Wendell Community Park has new playground equipment, and the improvement project will continue with an ADA accessible walking trail, a new horseshoe pit and bocce ball court, and a multi-purpose field to host soccer, field hockey, and lacrosse. An existing gravel parking lot is also going to be paved. The Lakewood Drive project continues and is scheduled to be completed in May. The Todd Street drainage project is in its final stages and should be completed in March. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Wendell Mayor Show.